When Chris Cornell was found dead in his Detroit hotel room, the details of the case confused many. Months after, Chester Bennington dies as well, and something just doesn't seem to add up. Everyone knows this case and what happened, but I'm going to start with a recap. On May 18, 2017, Chris Cornell was found dead in his Detroit hotel room by his bodyguard Martin Kirsten. Chris was found with a red cord around his neck and blood coming out of his mouth, pointing to an obvious suicide. When the EMTs arrived, you can hear one of them say on the voice recording, quote, "trauma to the back of the head," end quote. This is what confuses most people. Why would he have a head wound if he took his own life? It was also reported that Chris had 9 broken ribs. This was shot down as most said the broken ribs were inflicted during a CPR attempt. However, chest compressions breaking 9 ribs is extremely rare.
Strangulation, trauma to the back of the head, history of depression.
In most cases, only 1 to 3 ribs are broken during CPR. Chris's bodyguard, Martin Kirsten, says he broke down the latched door to gain access to Chris's room. However, there wasn't nearly enough damage done to the door frame if this was the case. Chris was pronounced dead on scene and the official cause of death was... However, Chris's death points more to what is called homicidal ligature strangulation. The main theory is that Vicky, Chris's wife, orchestrated his demise. Martin Kirsten was hired by Vicky to follow Chris around whilst on tour, and the couple were reportedly getting a divorce. Martin claimed he was paid to, quote, "keep an eye on Chris at all times." So if that's true, why did he leave Chris in his room by himself? Chris was cremated on May 23, 2017. If anyone suspected something other than a suicide, why would he be cremated so fast? There's a lot of unanswered questions on Chris Cornell's last moments. On July 20th, 2017, one of Chris's closest friends and Linkin Park lead singer, Chester Bennington, was found hanging in his Palos Verdes home. Chester was reportedly home alone before a maid found him. Near the body was an opened bottle of liquor. Chester, who was sober, had apparently relapsed. Bennington struggled throughout life, and when Chris Cornell, one of his best friends, died, it could have pushed him over the edge. But many believe that Chester's passing also wasn't what it seemed, and here's the reason why. It was reported sometime after the two men's deaths that both Bennington and Cornell, along with famous DJ Avicii and celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain, were working on a documentary about childs titled The Silent Children. This documentary would have supposedly exposed a large ring, including celebrities and other high-profile figures. As well as the two musicians, Bourdain and Avicii, were also found hanging. The creators of the Silent Children documentary broke their silence, telling the media that none of the men mentioned had ever worked on the documentary or even had knowledge of it. The documentary The Silent Children was canceled on January 9th, 2017, months before Chris and Chester's passing. This seems to be a rumor that's been spread around for years now, and even on my documentary about both men, there's plenty of comments about how the two men did not hurt themselves. There's inconsistencies in both passings. However, to say they were taken out due to a documentary they had no involvement in seems kind of unlikely. Now, me personally, I believe there is some inconsistency in both Chris and Chester's passings, some things that really do not make sense. For instance, Chris Cornell's broken ribs, 9 broken ribs from a hanging death is extremely weird. I'm not a medical examiner, but that doesn't seem to add up. I mean, I've never heard of someone having 9 broken ribs during chest compressions. And people actually went and looked this up in medical databases and asked, how many ribs usually get broken during CPR, and it was definitely not 9, it was more around 2 or 3. I remember there was a big speculation when Chris Cornell first passed away that, it was some big cover-up, he did not take his life, and I think that mostly stems from people, fans such as myself, not wanting to acknowledge that this man was in pain and to acknowledge that his mental health got the better of him, which is a horrible thing. And It's a very sad reality, but I personally do not believe that Chris Cornell or Chester Bennington, I don't know how Chester got brought into this. I just found out the other day that they had no involvement in this Silent Children documentary. This was news to me. I thought they had involvement in it, but apparently they did not. So personally, I believe that the two deaths were as they seemed, even if some things were a little odd. There's definitely something there that hasn't been disclosed, but I do think they're closer to what they seemed than, people make it out to be.